Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
All right, here we are, folks, at a loaded Monday, and I just want to tell you right out of the box, it's not possible to do everything I've got here in the first segment. It's not possible to do everything I do in the first half hour, everything I have here. So if you don't hear what you think is a top drawer story in the first half hour, don't panic, don't fret. We're going to get to all of it. It's just not possible. I mean, I couldn't even set the table with everything coming up here in the first segment. We got Trump. We've got the Mueller investigation and what it really is all about. We have a tainted investigator on the Mueller team. They're all tainted. They're all Clinton donors and lawyers. What do you mean, a tainted investigator? The whole team is a bunch of partisans. The FBI is in tatters, as Trump says. We've got all that coming up, but I want to start, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, yes, 800-282-2882. If you want to be on the program, the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. The three major networks have yet to explain Brian Ross has been suspended for a month. The three major networks are ignoring this story. Brian Ross, once again, crapped the bed on Friday with an absolute BS story that he had to know was BS. And we opened the program on Friday calling him out, urging everybody not to panic over what Brian Ross was reporting because you can't trust it. This guy has reported lies about me throughout my career. Some of it genuinely damaging, and if I weren't a public figure, I would have had actionable opportunities on it. But he has shown himself to be a full-fledged partisan, and ABC knows it, and Brian Ross gives ABC exactly what it wants. The idea that they're outraged and disappointed over what happened is crazy. He gets a 4-week unpaid vacation over the month of December, which, as we all know, by the time we hit the Christmas break, traditionally not a whole lot of news is made. So it ain't that bad a deal for Brian Ross, and I doubt that his reputation in his own mind has been damaged at all here. But let's go back and relive the moment when I tried to calm the waters here on Friday when what Brian Ross had reported was that the president, as a candidate, had encouraged members of his team to call the Russians and tamper with Obama administration foreign policy. He mentioned that Trump ordered this done as a candidate. Were that true, that would be big news, and that would be very bad, and that would have been very wrong, but it didn't happen. It happened after Trump became president-elect, after he had won the election, and it happened during the transition, making it not a big deal at all, making it quite common for Trump ordering various members of his team to call countries and their representatives to set the table for the incoming new administration. There's nothing criminal about it, except they're trying to criminalize this particular presidential transition. So they ran with this, and over on The View, I mean, Joy Behar's doing a dance like she probably hasn't done in 70 years. So excited, so thrilled, had no idea that Brian Ross had made it up, lied about it, got it wrong, however you want to characterize it. This is how I opened the program Friday. Yeah, don't mean to be talking down here, but everybody calm down. Just calm down. ABC News and Brian Ross are exactly who we think they are. Brian Ross reporting that Flynn's promised to tell Mueller anything he wants to know about Trump and his family. Folks, it's Brian Ross, it's ABC, it's much ado about nothing. Here is Brian Ross last Friday morning, ABC special report, anchor George Stephanopoulos talking to Brian Ross about Flynn pleading guilty to a count of lying to the FBI. which we're going to get into again, folks, here today. It's all going to be made clear today. Talking about transparency and clarity, that's the coin of the realm here. And by the time we finish, you will have no questions or doubts about anything that's happened since we were last together on Friday. So Stephanopoulos says, hey, Brian, this would suggest that Michael Flynn had a fair amount of information to offer the special counsel in return.
He's prepared to testify, we are told by a confidant, against President Trump, against members of the Trump family, and others in the White House. He's prepared to testify that President Trump, as a candidate, Donald Trump, directed him to make contact with the Russians, which contradicts all that Donald Trump has said at this point.
Well, now, the key word in that bite is President Trump as a candidate, meaning before the election. And had that happened, then the Trump team and Trump would be in heap big doo-doo. But it was wrong. And, of course, Stephanopoulos' question is wrong. Brian, this would suggest Michael Flynn had a fair amount of information to offer. No, it doesn't. It means that Flynn doesn't have anything to offer. If all they got him on was lying to the FBI in a process crime, when your lead witness can't testify to the scheme, and Flynn's not testifying or pleading guilty to any scheme here, he's testifying or pleading guilty to lying to investigators. So Mueller has secured as his number one witness an admitted liar. Now, if this case ever sees an indictment before a jury, Flynn's not going to do them any good, but that's not what they're aiming for here, folks. They're aiming for impeachment, and they're aiming for impeachment on an obstruction of justice charge. There is no collusion with Russia. There never was any collusion with Russia, and they're not pursuing collusion with Russia. They're going to go after Trump for obstructing justice. It all has to do with Trump asking Comey to go easy on Flynn, whether or not Trump knew that Flynn had lied when all of that happened. They don't have anything on the primary objective of this entire investigation. They've got zilch, they got zero, they got nada. They don't have any collusion with the Russians because there wasn't any. All they've got now is an attempt to portray Trump as obstructing justice as president-elect and as president, not as a candidate. So Brian Ross makes this report, and the stock market tanks 350 points. This cost people a lot of money. It laid out there. This report laid out there for a while during most of the day, and people reacting to it, and most people didn't parse it. They didn't hear the word candidate at first. Some did eventually, which is what raised everybody's attention. And then Friday night on ABC's World News Tonight, here is a portion of Brian Ross's report about Flynn pleading guilty to one count lying to the FBI.
A clarification tonight on something one of Flynn's confidants told us, and we reported earlier today. He said the president had asked Flynn to contact Russia during the campaign. He's now clarifying that, saying, according to Flynn, candidate Trump asked him during the campaign to find ways to repair relations with Russia and other hotspots. And then after the election, the president-elect asked him and told him to contact Russia on issues, including working together to fight ISIS.
Well, thanks, Brian. It just means your first report's it's not only not worthless, it was damaging, and I believe purposely so. I don't believe any objectivity. I don't give them the benefit of the doubt anymore. This kind of stuff, this is not tough. When you're going to issue a report saying that a candidate, and yet throwing this off on a source, does anybody believe there's a source out there? Brian Ross's correction, we reported, we clarified. Now, my source is clarifying that. Why is the source clarifying? Why didn't you clarify the source before you ran with the original story? Answer, too juicy. You know what's happening here, folks? I'm going to tell you exactly these people are so lost in their dream of impeaching Trump. I've told you last week, I've told you many days prior, these people get up I'm talking about everybody in the drive-by media in Washington, New York, that whole corridor. They wake up every day. What gets them out of bed is that this day, every day, is going to be the day where the silver bullet is found. And we're going to nail Trump today. It's going to happen today. That's what they get out of it because they believe that bullet exists. They have immersed themselves so much in this lying, stinking premise that Trump colluded with the Russians to steal the election from Hillary. They've been immersed in it for so long, they now believe it. Whatever objectivity they bring to this, if any, whatever intelligence they bring to this, they're lost now. They're so immersed in this, they literally believe it. And each one of them gets up every day thinking they're going to be the one that discovers the story, that discovers the item, that discovers the evidence. Evidence is going to nail Trump. They all do. They live it and they breathe it. And this is what happened to Brian Ross. I don't know who his source is, and I don't know what his source really told him, but they believe that Donald Trump actually was colluding with the Russians. They believe the Trump dossier. They believe it in their minds, and they believe it in their hearts. No more objectivity, no more curiosity, no more openness to alternatives. They believe it. And so they have corrupted their own intellects. They have corrupted their own professionalism individually. And this is exactly what happened. They got a morsel here, and they so want this to be true that Brian Ross either heard something that wasn't said or did indeed hear something that was said and ran the risk of running with it anyway, because why not? My buddies in the media are going to back me up. My management in the media are going to back me up because we all hate Trump and we all want Trump to go. And we're all so sorry and sad about what happened to Matt Lauer. And so we've got a score to settle here. Well, then all hell broke loose. And I can't tell you that I was so gratified the number of emails I got Friday night. You called it, you called it, you called it. I know I did. Because I know these people. And you know why I knew it? Let's go back. July 20th, 2012. Once again, Good Morning America with George Stephanopoulos. He is interviewing ABC's chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, about the alleged shooter in a mass shooting in Aurora, Colorado.
I want to go to Brian Ross here, because Brian, you've been looking at investigating the background of Jim Holmes here. You found something that might be significant.
There is a Jim Holmes of Aurora, Colorado page on the Colorado Tea Party site as well, talking about him joining the Tea Party last year. Now, we don't know if this is the same Jim Holmes, but it's Jim Holmes of Aurora, Colorado.
Okay, well, we'll keep looking at that.
Okay, well, now let me ask you a question. You're Brian Ross, ABC News, Washington. Investigative reporter, chief investigative correspondent, trench coat and everything. And there's a mass shooting in Aurora, Colorado. And the first instinct you have after learning the man's name is to go check a Tea Party roster? That's the first instinct you've got? The first question that occurs to you? Jim Holmes, I wonder if this guy happens to be a mad right-winger Tea Party member. And lo and behold, he goes wherever he has to find these rosters of members of the Tea Party. Lo and behold, there's a Jim Holmes there. You imagine, his heart must have been beating. He must have been unable to contain himself here. He might have had to exert more control over his bodily functions than you'd ever know possible. He could not wait to get this story on the air that the shooter was a Tea Party member. Turned out to be not true. But Rush, he alluded in that report. I heard we don't know if it's the same Jim Holmes. They were hoping. Doesn't matter if they knew or not. They made the report and they established the connection. And you know as well as I do that the low information crowd hears this stuff, and then once a connection is made and the emotional reaction occurs, they hear nothing that follows. Tea Party shot up a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado. Brian Ross was not suspended for that. He was suspended by ABC News on Friday, but again, ABC, CBS, NBC, the three primary broadcast networks have not even reported that. He's been suspended without pay for 4 weeks during December. The first report was that he was suspended with pay, which meant that he was going to get a 4-week Christmas vacation. Paid, but it turned out not to be the case. But this is why, my friends, my instincts guided by intelligence said, don't sweat this, Friday. This probably isn't true. Intelligence, instinct, guided by experience. Jeff Greenfield, CNN reliable sources on Sunday, talking to little Brian Stelter about this. Stelter said, Jeff, when we look at what's going on so far, we don't know what Flynn may say to Mueller. Isn't that the point, that this isn't exonerating for Trump? It's not incriminating. We don't know yet what's going on.
That's what made this error so consequential. I'm going to be very blunt about this. I'm sorry. This is not Brian Ross's first mistake in reporting breaking news inaccurately, linking Saddam to the anthrax attacks in 2001, linking the Aurora shooter to a Tea Party by using the wrong name. This is exactly what Trump and his allies want to say. No matter what you hear on mainstream media, it's fake. They're doing it to hurt us. And this is like handing a sword to the people who want all media to be looked at in that regard.
Well, I just had the latest polling data appear here on my hands, my formerly nicotine-stained fingers, and it's from thehill.com. A majority of Trump supporters say the media is the enemy of the American people, and that's in quotes. A majority of President Trump supporters in a new poll agree with the president's claim that the media is the enemy of the American people. This is a poll from YouGov. According to the data, more than 60% of Trump approvers said they agreed with the statement. Only 15% of Trump disapprovers said they agreed with it, according to BuzzFeed. You people in the drive-bys, you're trying to separate Trump from his supporters and voters, and you're going backwards. You are cementing Trump's supporters to him. You are tightening that bond. And it's not just Brian Ross. It's the whole lot of you. Well, I mean, there are exceptions out there, of course. Let me take a brief time out. We'll come back and get on to the next one after this. Let me give you a little factoid here that I think is going to have relevance, and you don't need to fade the music like that down to zilch. You can let it keep going for a while. Not enough time here in this segment to delve deeply into our next premise, which is what the Mueller investigation is all about. But if this ever comes to impeachment, where does impeachment occur? House of Representatives. And then the Senate is where the trial takes place. And in the Senate, you need 2/3 of the senators voting to convict. And in the House, you need overwhelming support for the premise. And the way the House and Senate are constituted right now never happened. I don't think even as much animus as there is toward Trump among some Republicans, the idea of helping to impeach a president of your own party. But the future. Remember the big hurricane that wiped out Puerto Rico? The publisher of the newspapers in Puerto Rico is reporting that by their count, 320,000 Puerto Ricans have immigrated to the United States, 70% of them to Florida. Now, the publisher of the Puerto Rican newspaper says that all of these people are very disappointed in the response of the Trump administration to help Puerto Rico recover. She believes by the end of 2018, there will be nearly 400,000 to 500,000 immigrants. Think illegal immigrants in Florida. And if 60% of them register Democrat, then Florida ever voting for a Republican presidential candidate may be lost for as long as we can see. Clarification, I know that Puerto Rican refugees are not illegal immigrants. I said that to help create a mental picture here because the point I'm trying to make is the hurricane in Puerto Rico has devastated the country and Puerto Rican citizens are immigrating to the United States. They vote in presidential elections or territory, but they vote in Puerto Rico. Now, it's possible that these people, because the publisher of the newspapers in Puerto Rico says that Puerto Rican citizens are very unhappy. And I know it's the Puerto Rican media, and I know it's a bunch of libs, but this is what's out there. I'm just telling you. that Puerto Ricans are very dissatisfied with the Trump administration because so little has been done to rebuild the nation, Puerto Rico, San Juan, and other areas. And so they've been forced to leave. And the point is the number of them who have come to Florida. Right now, there are about 300,000 of them in Florida. And it is, according to this newspaper editor, that number could become 400,000 to 500,000 by 2018. Now, I don't know how many of these new arrivals would be able to vote in congressional elections next November. But certainly by 2020, if they remain, and if they remain in Florida, if 60% register Democrat, you're talking about 500,000 new arrivals. You know, Florida is what has given the Republican Party a chance at winning the White House. If the Republicans have no hope of winning Florida, just like there is no hope of winning California, and just like there's no way Republicans are ever going to win New York, if that happens to Florida, then the Republicans are kissing the presidency goodbye for who knows how long. And should this number of Puerto Ricans moving to Florida impact presidential or congressional elections, say in the midterms, well, then if you have the Democrats after the 2018 midterms running the House, then impeachment becomes a much more relevant thing. I should say getting a guilty plea. Well, even the impeachment itself, the articles of impeachment are written and put together by the House. And then the House has what are called House managers. They are, in essence, the lawyers, and each of them are given an area of the case to become expert in, and they go over to the Senate and conduct the trial, and the Senate is the jury. There needs to be 67 senators voting to convict on high crimes and misdemeanors in order to get an impeachment, a conviction. You can be impeached without being convicted. This is another thing. But just the very existence or the very occurrence of a president being impeached is all it takes for the die to be cast. Whether the Clinton was impeached, it'll forever be on his record. He was not convicted. The Senate wanted nothing to do with it. And many of the House managers who ran the case were so humiliated by it that they have become moderates now. Lindsey Graham Lindsey Graham used to be a Newt Gingrich conservative until he was House manager for the impeachment of Clinton. And the fallout from it was so negative that in order to save face, reputation, a bunch of House managers either quit or moderated their ideological profile so that they could go forth having seen the light and not be seen as dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. So that brings us now here to what this Mueller investigation is really all about. You know what? First, I'm going to take this call. Snerdley's put a call up here, and it specifically relates to Brian Ross. And if I wait for a half hour to take this, we're going to be on to other things. And while the subject is still fresh in people's minds, I want to grab the caller rather than force him to wait. It's Troy in Whitehall, Wisconsin. I'm glad you called. What's happening?
Merry Christmas, Rush. Been a fan for a long time. Thank you for taking my call.
You bet, sir.
I'm extremely nervous, so please be patient. When I was listening to your podcast on Friday, I'm a brand new 24/7 subscriber, so it's a great thing.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that.
How did you know so instinctively to call this out so fast before it really got traction?
Well, you mean the Brian Ross thing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, it's a good question. Take me through. You're listening to me say what I said on Friday. I want you to describe for me. This helps me. This helps me empathize with the audience. What was your reaction when you heard me basically say, folks, don't sweat it. It's Brian Ross. There's nothing here. It doesn't mean anything. What went through your mind when you heard me saying that?
I just was like, how do you know that? How do you know? Because I mean, I've listened to you long enough to know not to believe the mainstream media, but this sounded pretty credible. But you immediately called Mr. Ross out and said this is not going to happen the way he's saying it's going to happen. And I was just like, how do you know that? How can you so instinctively know?
Okay, that's good. See,
believe
the reason I asked you that is because that you confirmed a suspicion or opinion I have, and it is this, that despite what everybody knows about the drive-by media, they still tend to believe them. It just, right. It's human nature. It's nothing against you. It doesn't mean that you're falling down on the job of interpretation. Just the media and the tendency, the human, if it's on the page, if it's the printed or published word, you believe it. Even if it's in a rag publication you've never heard of, just because the word's on paper, you believe it. This is ABC News, and you think, they couldn't lie about this. They couldn't. This is too big. And yet here you hear me telling everybody, discount it. It's Brian Ross. There's a simple answer to this, but you may have a tough time not accepting it, because I don't think you believe I lie to you, but you might have a bit of a problem with this, because it isn't complicated. I have multiple years' experience watching these people. I know liberalism, and I know media like the back of my hand. I've studied them. My entire 30 years of this program, much of it has been spent explaining liberalism to people so that I can effectively refute it. Explaining the media, who they are, how they operate, examples of how they operate, so that I can refute it, so that I can hopefully be persuasive with people in convincing them not to believe out of the chute everything they hear. So with me, when I say it's intelligence guided by experience, that's really it. All I needed to know, based on 30 years of watching this stuff, Troy, it was Brian Ross, and that's 80% of it. The other 20% of it was ABC. And you couple that with what I already explained. They live and breathe with this unquenchable desire to destroy Donald Trump. They wake up every day, each one of them. Every drive-by media, male and female, that you watch or read, I'm telling you, every one of them wakes up every day hoping that day is going to be the day that they or one of their colleagues find the silver bullet that's going to nail Trump. They are convinced it's there. They have become delusional. They have so immersed themselves in this lie for the last 12 months plus that they believe Trump colluded. They believe Hillary should have won. They believe the election was hacked and tampered with. They believe Trump colluded with Putin to screw Hillary out of the election. They believe it like you believe whatever you mostly believe in your life. They believe it. They don't hope it. They don't think it. They believe it. And so when here comes a story that features something we have never heard in all of this, never did we hear that Trump as a candidate, not that word specifically was not mentioned. But the bottom line, Troy, is that I know it didn't happen. And the way I know it didn't happen is by watching the very drive-by media and the Democrat Party. If there was evidence that it happened, we would have long ago known it, and they would have long ago used it and long ago tried to get rid of Trump. There is no evidence. There will not be any evidence because there isn't any. They had to manufacture a fake dossier to further along this fake narrative. They are living a series of lies. So it's only common sense that when you have Flynn flipping and admitting to lying to the FBI, these people think that Flynn has told Mueller that Trump told him to call the Russians and fake the election. Screw with the... That's what they think. Since there's no evidence for it, they have to get as close to that as they can, and that's what Brian Ross's report was. And I had no doubt from the first moment I saw it that it was not going to hold up. Was I guessing? Yeah, because, I don't work at ABC. I don't know Brian Ross. I hadn't talked to him about it. So, yes, total wild guess, but it really wasn't. It's intelligence guided by experience and a fearlessness to say so. Because I know them. I've studied them my whole life. The fact that I've done that, I can't tell you how frustrating it is that more people don't see it. Because to me, it's so obvious and easy. But again, I've spent 30 years on it. But that is the answer. I appreciate the call and I appreciate the question, a chance to answer it. We'll be back after this with much more. Hang in, folks. Yeah, we're back. Rush Limbaugh on the cutting edge of societal evolution. So the president is tweeting and commenting on the FBI, claiming the FBI is in tatters. President not only tweeted this, but he said this to the media gaggle before boarding Marine One helicopter to go out to Joint Base Andrews this morning, then to fly on to Utah to give back some public land that the Obama administration took. At any rate, here's the tweet. So General Flynn lies to the FBI and his life is destroyed, while crooked Hillary, on that now famous FBI holiday interrogation with no swearing in and no recording, lies many times and nothing happens to her. Rigged system or just a double standard? And then he goes on to talk about the FBI is in tatters. This involves the Mueller investigator named Peter Strzok. Some say it's Struck. It's STRZOK. This is the guy who ran the Hillary Clinton email server investigation, was a married Hillary supporter conducting an adulterous affair with a government lawyer, dissing Trump. This guy, the guy running the Hillary Clinton email server investigation, Peter Strzok, was a married Hillary supporter, and he turned into a chief investigator for Mueller. Mueller had to let him go this past summer because of his anti-Trump tweets with people. But we didn't learn about this when it actually happened. We learned about it months later. Ari Fleischer made a good point in a tweet. These anti-Trump texts, these anti-Trump text messages, what this guy was conveying to people, should be released. The public should be able to judge for themselves the extent of how anti-Trump the messages were and what they could mean for Mueller's investigation. Why keep them secret? Damn straight right. We have an investigator so anti-Trump, he's texting people about it. He worked on the Hillary email investigation. He's also the guy who was okay with the FBI not investigating the DNC's hacked server. He was fine with that. The guy's a total full-fledged partisan. And Mueller had to let him go because it was discovered how partisan he was operating. Every one of Mueller's investigators is partisan, folks. In fact, there's probably not an FBI investigator who isn't, if they're worth their salt. I mean, they've got to be thinking, engaged people, got to have political opinions. But this guy was letting that impact his work to the point that Mueller had to let go of him. We need to see what he was tweeting or texting. We have every right to it, it would seem to me. These are the investigators. Guy had to be let go. So Trump has decided to tackle the FBI, among many other strategies that he is employing here. And, of course, when this happens, when Trump starts tweeting or when other people tweet in Trump's behalf, they decide in the swamp to start questioning Trump's judgment. They start questioning his mental stability. But remember that story I just had on the percentage of Trump supporters who think the media is the enemy? Why do you think that is? It's two-pronged. The media is a primary player in that, but it's also because of Trump's tweets. Trump's tweets is, aside from programs like this, the only place people can get that perspective on the media. But when he starts tweeting like this against sacred institutions, you can bet that they're going to start questioning his judgment, his mental stability, and all that. Now, if Trump knows, and this is a big if, but I'm talking about Trump's state of mind here. If Trump knows that there is no real illegality that jeopardizes his presidency, if he knows that he hasn't committed any criminal acts that jeopardize his presidency, then he also knows that he is fighting an illegitimate political lynch mob. These two things are linked. If Trump knows, if his lawyers have told him, if he thinks that he hasn't done anything that warrants this investigation, then he has to believe that the investigation is illegitimate and political. A political mob conducting a silent coup out to impeach Trump. Political process. It's not a criminal process. This is a political process. It requires votes, not indictments. It requires votes, not guilty pleas. Every day, pressure from the media, pressure from Democrats, pressure from the deep state is brought to bear on both the public and Republicans in Congress. Now, if Mueller doesn't have the goods, Democrats have to create a narrative that Trump is crazy, or they have to start accusing their own side of sexual harassment and having these guys drop like flies so they can go after Trump on that. He's a wanton abuser, or he's unstable, his policies kill people, he's unfit. They have to go after Trump politically. Trump is choosing to respond in kind. There's more on this. I got to go, though. And a top-of-the-hour obscene profit break. And we'll be right back and roll right on. Same energy level, nothing slowing down here today, folks. Hang on. And we're back. Great to have you here, my friends. Rush Limbaugh, executing assigned host duties flawlessly. Zero mistakes. Our telephone number is 800-282-2882. The email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. By the way, we have a brand new ornament for sale. We've never gone to this degree of detail and I'm going to say quality. We have really upgraded the quality of our annual EIB Christmas ornament this year, and I'll have more information for it as the program unfolds, but you can see it at the EIB store at rushlimbaugh.com. And normally what we do is give an ornament away with new subscribers to the website and the newsletter during the Christmas season. We're doing it a different way this year. We're continuing the premium, the prize, if you will, given to new subscribers is this. Show them on the side camera here, Brian. Is a new Tervis tumbler. And that is what everybody gets with a new subscription. Of course, a picture of me, some pithy things that I have said. It's Pithy. I'm not mispronouncing anything. They're pithy things. And the ornament is now an item that is for sale at the EIB store. And they're hand forged, they're handmade by an American company in Pennsylvania. And they're gorgeous. It's not a multicolored ornament. It's not like that. This will look different than any other ornament you have on the tree. But until I get time to go into detail about it, you can see it at rushlimbaugh.com at the EIB store. Now, I want to get back to what Trump is up against here, because it has become apparent to a lot of people. Dianne Feinstein now is saying that in the Senate, their investigation into Trump-Russia collusion has become an obstruction of justice investigation. And I think that's what Mueller is. Mueller has always been an investigation leading to impeachment, not crime. We're not looking here at an investigation that's going to lead to an indictment by a grand jury that will then have trials with evidence placed before a jury where guilt or innocence is concerned. This is obviously a collection of evidence, obstruction of justice. They're going to try to nail Trump on this and have that lead into impeachment proceedings. Now, this has caused one of the president's lawyers, a man named John Dowd, to tweet out that a president cannot be guilty of obstruction of justice because he runs the executive branch and as such is entitled to know everything going on there if he wants, and can fire anybody he wants at any time, which legally he can do. Politically, of course, there are consequences for this. Now, Andy McCarthy, who, by the way, I'm going to be interviewing tomorrow afternoon after the program for the next issue of the Limbaugh letter, specializes in a number of subjects. This is one of them. He's written a book on impeachment, referring to it. It was back during the Obama days, that impeachment is a political act and therefore requires the will of the American people to succeed. It's not legal, even though high crimes and misdemeanors. The Russian collusion angle, there isn't any collusion, there isn't any evidence, and yet this investigation's ongoing. And it turns out that the investigation is attempting to criminalize a presidential transition. Now, what is happening here, in my humble opinion, and I'm not alone in this, and I'm not saying this for the first time, I think there is, and has been ever since Trump was elected, a silent coup to get him out of office, ultimately. And before that is realized, they want to totally discredit Trump. They cannot stand that an outsider has come in and become the most powerful man in the free world. They literally can't stand it. They can't stand it. The taste in their mouths is rancid, and they've got to get rid of it. This is such an affront to them, intellectually, personally, and so forth. Trump has to go. And it doesn't matter party affiliation, Republicans and Democrats alike, who are members in good standing in the swamp, mostly agree that we can't abide it. We just can't have an outsider come in here. We have elections notwithstanding. So what we have here, folks, is, when you strip it all away, an attempt to invalidate a duly constituted presidential election. They first tried to get public opinion revved up against Trump on the concept of colluding with the Russians to alter the election. That didn't work because there never was any collusion. There never was any evidence. They're not going to find it. They tried to even manufacture evidence with a phony fake Trump dossier, but even that wouldn't move public opinion. So now they're on to obstruction of justice, leading to impeachment. And it is the conclusion of many learned legal minds that the guilty plea of Michael Flynn confirms what this is. That it is the fact that the collusion probe is over. So if you look at Flynn copping a plea for lying to the FBI in the context of collusion, you're missing the boat. That's not what this is about. They're going to keep talking about it. They will continue to use it as cover for what they're really doing. But Mueller has no constraints. Remember, when he was impaneled by the Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, there was no limit on his direction. There was no crime elucidated for him to pursue. This is wide open. He can go look for anything, anywhere that he wants. The guilty pleas he's gotten, the indictments he's law for, have nothing to do with the presidential campaign. You know, Manafort and this other guy, they're in legal jeopardy for things that happened long before they even became part of the Trump campaign. So that thing has fallen apart. So where we're at now is that this is an impeachment investigation. And just to review how we know this, look at Flynn and what he copped a plea to. He copped a plea to lying to investigators. He didn't cop a plea to being part of a scheme to tamper with elections. The whole premise of this thing, he didn't plead guilty to. Now, if a prosecutor has an accomplice cooperator, which is what Flynn is, who gives the government incriminating information about the scheme that's under investigation, then that's half your case won. If you've got somebody participating in the scheme who pleads guilty to a charge, who then has to go allocute before a judge as part of the plea deal, And in the process, if your cooperator explains the scheme, such as, yes, President Trump and I eagerly worked with Vladimir Putin to steal the election from Hillary Clinton. If you got a cooperator who will testify to that, your case is home free. You've got a guy who has to tell the truth, or he can go to jail for lying for this. And he becomes the expert witness, but that is not what happened. No scheme was admitted to by Flynn because there isn't one. Flynn admitted lying to investigators. The guilty plea allocution in which the accomplice explains to the court what he and his co-conspirators did to carry out the scheme, that puts enormous pressure on the other accomplices, because you've got an accomplice flipping, and everybody else involved knows they're toast. But again, that's not what happened. So people who are not quite right on what's going on are saying, Mueller's admitting he doesn't have a case. Mueller's admitting he's got nothing. This is a bad thing. That's not what Mueller's admitting, because that's not where Mueller's going. The practice of pressuring a guilty plea to the major charges in the scheme make the accomplice a formidable witness. If you've got somebody participating in the scheme, in this case to corrupt the election, why? There's your case, and there's your witness. But Mueller's chief witness has admitted to lying. Mueller's chief witness is an admitted liar. That's what he copped to. So it would be foolish to use Flynn in the collusion case, A, because there isn't one, B, he's damaged goods. So that changes dramatically what is going on here. Since there's no collusion case, the only assumption is that Mueller is trying to obtain an obstruction of justice case against Trump, not just underlings. And even then, obstruction of justice is a process crime. It occurs during the course of the investigation. Obstruction of justice is not the crime. Obstruction of justice occurs investigating the crime. So it also is a process crime. That means it relates to the interference in the investigation of an underlying transaction that may or may not be criminal. Mueller's theory, according to Mr. McCarthy, appears to be straightforward. The FBI was investigating Russian meddling in the election and the possibility of Trump campaign complicity in it. Even though Michael Flynn's interactions with Russian ambassador did not amount to Trump campaign collusion, they did show that the Trump transition was dabbling in foreign relations with the Putin regime, which, of course, is perfectly fine if it's occurring during the transition and you're using it to set up relationships ongoing. But if you're attempting to undermine the sitting or current administration's foreign policy, why, then they might have something. And that's where they're headed. They're going to try to turn Flynn's phone calls with Kislyak into an attempt to undermine Obama's sanctions policy on Russia and get Trump on obstruction of justice by firing Comey, because Comey was on to what's going on. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, it's going to be more involved. So Mueller would theorize that Flynn had a motive to lie about his contacts with the Russian ambassador, and because Flynn was taking direction from Trump transition officials, Trump had a motive to make the FBI's Flynn investigation disappear. This is all assumption, and this is what they're now trying to nail, I think. The motive, according to the theory, explains why Trump pressured Comey to drop the Flynn investigation and why he fired Comey. And the very next day, remember, he had Russian diplomats in the Oval Office, and he told them he fired Comey because of Russia. So it's an impeachment case. That's where they're headed with this. So let's assume the worst. Let's assume, and we're just assuming here, because this is what Mueller and the rest of these clowns would love to be the case. Let's assume that Trump did know that Flynn had lied to the FBI, which means Flynn had committed a felony, even though it's just a process crime. So we're assuming the worst. Trump knew that Flynn had lied to the FBI, and he leaned on Comey to close the investigation, because Flynn's a good guy. He never hurt anybody. But, folks, Mr. McCarthy tells me that even assuming the worst here, there still is no obstruction case. Even as I've laid it out here. Even if Trump knew that Flynn had lied and leaned on Comey to shut the investigation down, there is still no Trump obstruction. The FBI, the Justice Department, are not a separate branch of government. They are subordinates of the president, delegated to exercise his power, not their own. And even on Comey's account, Trump did not order him to shut down the investigation, the Flynn investigation. But he could have. Trump can do what he wants. Politically, there are consequences, but legally, he can do what he wants. He could have pardoned Flynn. He still could pardon Flynn. That would have ended the criminal investigation the FBI was conducting. And there would have been no possibility of review. If Trump pardons Flynn, it's over. Now, you might say that would be really lowball thing to do, damaging national security, damaging Trump's reputation and image. But the point of this is, the president has the undeniable power to do all of this. He had the undeniable power to fire Comey. You can argue about his reasoning being incorrect or unprofessional or haphazard, but it doesn't obscure the fact that he could do it. He could do it because it was Tuesday and he didn't like the pizza he had for lunch. He can do it for any reason he wants. The president had undeniable power to fire the FBI director. The president may not be prosecuted in a criminal judicial proceeding for exercising his discretion, however objectionable it might be, if it's in executive matters over which the courts have no power of review. And they don't. Trump fires Comey. The courts don't have a say in it. That's the judicial branch. It's not their area. If Mueller tries to indict Trump, Trump would have unfettered discretion to fire Mueller and to direct the Justice Department to drop the case. He can do all of that. People may not like it. May think it's politically stupid to do if he did it, but now any power can be abused. And when executive powers are abused, Congress retains constitutional authority to impeach and remove. Obstruction of an FBI investigation may not be prosecutable in court, but if you look at Nixon and the Clinton situations, they are impeachable if you can make the case in the trial at the Senate. I have to take a break here. Sit tight. We'll be back with more after this. Now, John Dowd is the president's lawyer, claims the president cannot obstruct justice. We need to unpack that. That may not be the best legal advice being given the president here, but I want to get to the phones. That and much more coming up. We go to Dwight, Washington, D.C. Dwight, great to have you here, sir. How are you doing?
Just fine, Rush. Hello, Rush.
I'm right here.
I'm 67 years of age. I'm a Washingtonian, Washington, D.C. I'm a Black Out for American. I'm going to tell you something. Thank you for inviting me on board your show. I find the information that you have given me and your insight to be very informative. You know, I've been voting ever since I've come out of high school. I've always voted with blind loyalty, and I saw what a disaster I made of my vote that I considered valuable straight out of high school. Even now today, it rubs me the wrong way when I run across someone who says they don't vote. Well, I would like to remain a part of the political process.
You know who the most famous American is today who doesn't vote? Dun, dun, dun,
well,
dun.
when I run across when I run across these type of individuals, I do not pass judgment on them. I just say they're just not on board. I have to tell you, Rush, that I really appreciate the way you are a professional communicator. And I really appreciate the way you deliver your points across. I'm not going to pat you on the back, but so much. All I want you to do is to continue to do what you've always done.
Wow, this is amazing.
This is the first thing that I've done. This is the first time I voted Republican. After this brutal primary, it has informed me, and I was...
Dwight, let me tell you something. I have to stop you only because of the time constraints here, but I cannot convey to you how much your phone call means to me in the way you've assessed what I do here and its impact on you. That the whole reason I do this, you have just acknowledged it. I cannot thank you enough. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. All right, just one more thing on this. I don't want to get too deeply in the weeds, because we're now getting into the area here where it's complicated to remember all of the vagaries of this. But I do want to deal, because it's out there and a big deal is made of it, has been made of it. John Dowd, President Trump's lawyer, has tweeted that the president cannot obstruct justice. The president cannot obstruct justice because he is the chief law enforcement officer under the Constitution's Article 2 and has every right to express his view of any case. Dowd says that he drafted this weekend's Trump tweet that many people thought strengthened the case for obstruction. The tweet suggested that Trump knew that Michael Flynn had lied to the FBI when Trump fired him, which, if Trump knew that Flynn had lied to the FBI and fires him, it raises questions about the later firing of Comey, which is where they're headed now with obstruction. Trump trying to obstruct justice by obstructing the investigation by getting rid of Comey, which would not have shut down any investigation anyway. Now, here's the tweet, the Trump tweet in question over the weekend. I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He has pled guilty to those lies. It is a shame because his actions during the transition were lawful. There was nothing to hide. Now, Dowd says he tweeted that, not Trump. So it's a distinction between Trump tweeted and a Trump tweet. And sometimes other people compose Trump tweets and they send them to Dan Scavino, runs a social media office in the White House, and he posts them. And Dowd says that this tweet he wrote, Trump's lawyer. Trump did not write this. I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He's pled guilty to those lies. It's a shame because his actions during the transition were lawful. There was nothing to hide. Now, again, Andy McCarthy, let's put aside the Constitution and practical issue of whether a president may be prosecuted in a judicial proceeding for obstruction. Let's put aside Dowd's point for a moment. The question about whether Trump obstructed the investigation does not rise or fall on whether Trump knew Flynn had committed a crime. That doesn't matter. However, it is a more serious matter for a president to urge the dropping of a case against a friend, Flynn, who is known to have committed a crime rather than merely suspected of having done so. So while Dowd may be technically correct that a president cannot be found guilty of obstruction of justice, we're not talking about in a court of law. We're talking about impeachment. And when everybody knows this investigation is headed toward impeachment on obstruction, impeachment's a whole different ball of wax. High crimes and misdemeanors or whatever the House managers think they can prove in the Senate. And if they think they can obtain a conviction in the Senate by positing that Trump was trying to impede an investigation to prevent the FBI from finding out whether there was a crime by getting rid of Comey, that's different than in a court of law. And McCarthy's point is you'd think Trump's lawyers would know better than to put this out there like they're doing, that he's not being well served by his lawyers. So that basically is where this. So here's, I think, the strip everything away. The thing to understand is what they're now pursuing at the special counsel is a impeachment based on obstruction of justice. And we're not, if the House, which is now run by Republicans, if Mueller brings his case to the House, which he can do, and if he can recommend that the House start impeachment proceedings, the House can say, okay. Or they can say, screw it, we're not going to. The politics of all of this is going to determine it. If, for example, the House Republicans, the majority, think that there is overwhelming public opinion to hold Trump accountable, they will do it. If Trump's base doesn't abandon him, if Trump's supporters are all in and the Republicans are holding solid behind Trump, then they probably won't do it, although the temptation's going to be great because it's swamp versus outsider. In my mind, what's really going on here is a silent coup. There's no different than what we have suspected from the get-go, that this whole thing has been a sham, that there is no collusion, there never was any collusion, that the special counsel was impaneled and given his charge here in violation of Justice Department regulations, which require a crime. You cannot, according to regulations DOJ, appoint a special counsel without there being a crime to investigate. In this case, the deputy AG let Mueller investigate the world in search of a crime. And the best they can come up with is that Michael Flynn lied while being investigated, and this might propel them to being able to go with an obstruction case that would lead to impeachment. This case has always been about impeachment, not indictments and guilty verdicts in a court of law, which makes it a matter of pure, total politics. And they're going after Trump on a false premise. They've got everybody ginned up here on a false premise of collusion. Brian Ross's erroneous, lying, stinking report on Friday is all part of this. It's all part of ginning up public opinion that Trump is corrupt and cheated and stole the election. Remember, the three networks have not run the story that ABC issued a clarification and that Brian Ross has been suspended. So while there isn't any evidence of collusion, people still think that's what all of this is about. And any reason, if there was collusion between anybody and the Russians to affect an election, that's not good. And nobody would say, nothing, we got to ignore that. So they're trying to keep the fact that they're looking at that alive when in truth what they're going for is obstruction of justice. Now, keep a sharp eye on this as it goes forward. When it comes to collusion, Mueller has nothing. Dershowitz is right. Mueller's got absolutely nothing. Nobody has anything because there wasn't any. So now they're all into process crimes. Remember, obstruction of justice is itself a process crime. There wouldn't be any of this without that phony, fake lying premise that Trump colluded with the Russians, which makes all of this bogus. All of it. Every bit of it is bogus. Every supposed irregularity has occurred here within the process of this investigation that never had anything that was rooted in reality. Collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians. And Brian Ross's story on Friday proves it, because he puts out a report that Trump, as candidate, instructed Flynn to talk to the Russians and do whatever, and had to retract it, say, sorry, my source got it wrong. It was while Trump was president-elect, which makes it the transition, which makes it perfectly fine. No crime whatsoever. So now they're trying to politicize presidential transitions under the premise that Trump was trying to undermine Obama's foreign policy. There's no evidence of that either. This is a total sham. And they're now trying to get Trump on obstruction of justice, a process crime that would not have occurred had they not started down the phony road of collusion with Russia in the elections in the first place. The whole thing is manufactured. And they sold it well, and they made everybody think that there was some evidence. Remember all those deep state anonymous quotes? CNN, New York Times, Washington Post for over 6 months. Remember all of the illusions, all the special panels, all of the cable TV investigation. Nothing. The phony Trump dossier, nothing that was true. All of this is happening because the establishment was unhappy with the outcome of an election and wants to overturn it. And the media and everybody pretty much inside the Washington establishment is all in on this effort. Meanwhile, there really was collusion between Hillary Clinton and the Russians in preparing the Trump dossier. Meanwhile, there was a rigged election. The Democrat process was rigged during the primaries to secure more delegates for Hillary than Bernie Sanders. The FBI was not permitted to investigate the DNC computer that had been hacked, and the guy who was okay with that was the Mueller investigator who had to be let go because of anti-Trump bias. Obstruction, genuine criminality, collusion, it all happened on the Democrat side. And I haven't even gotten to the Uranium One deal, with the Clintons profiting and enriching themselves over the sale of a percentage of our uranium supply to Ukraine. That was coordinated with Russia as well. The Clinton Global Initiative, all of the collusion, all the things they're trying to get Trump on, the Democrats did. Got to take a break. I'm frosted over this, and everybody ought to damn well be. After this, don't go away. Waiting for our lightning-fast printer to spit out 2 paragraphs. But we're here, and welcome back, folks, El Rushbo and the EIB Network. Now, friends of the Flynn family, why do you think Flynn did what he did? What have you heard that explains Flynn admitting and comping the plea that he lied to investigators? What's the drive-by media telling you? They're telling us that he felt abandoned by Trump, and he's so hurt by that because he's Trump's original supporter. He was loyal to Trump. He did everything Trump asked. He helped Trump win the nomination. Trump has thrown him overboard, and so Flynn is going to drop the dime on Trump and Jared and Ivanka and even Barron for doing whatever he did to the swing set. He's going to unload on all of them, right? That's not what Flynn's family and friends are saying. Friends of the Michael Flynn family say he entered into the plea agreement because he has been broken emotionally and financially. That his family could not face another 2 to 3 years of this. And what is this? This is Flynn as a reprobate degenerate, lying scumbag every day in the media for 2 to 3 more years. They just couldn't put up with it. They were going after Flynn's son as well. And Flynn wanted to protect his son, so he copped the plea to stop them from also trying to destroy his son. Because they're not going to let go. If Flynn hadn't copped the plea, they wouldn't have let go of him until Trump is out of office. But believe you me, this is going to go on for as long as Trump is in office. They wore Flynn down. This guy wore the military uniform. This guy, he was a deep patriot. He ran the Defense Intelligence Agency. And look at him now caught up in this massively powerful deep state federal justice system that has been corrupted in this case to get rid of somebody the deep state doesn't want there, Donald Trump. Flynn's sister and brother have started a legal defense fund to pay for his attorneys. I know he lied. He lied to the investor. He lied to Trump. And a lot of people are trying to figure out why. He knew he was being recorded. He has his DIA guy. He's talking with the Russian ambassador. He had to know that they were going to catch him in the surveillance of the Russian ambassador. I have no doubt in his mind what he was doing was in loyalty to Trump. He was one of the first. He and Jeff Sessions were one of the first. And look at, it's not just Flynn. If they could get rid of Sessions, they would too, and teach him a lesson. Okay, to the phones. John in Nampa, Idaho. It's great to have you. I'm glad you waited, sir. What's shaking? What's happening?
Good morning, Rush. I can't believe I'm on the phone. This is like one of my top 10 bucket list things to do.
Well, I'm flattered. Thank you.
And I finally get to say, dittos, Rush. The reason why I called is I want to get to my point like I was told to do. The Flynn thing, you're right on the target with this, but I wanted to throw out a scenario for you. I believe that Trump and Mueller are working together to weed out the FBI. I think this Flynn thing is simply a ruse. And why I think that is he did lie to Pence, but he went to talk to Comey as well. And Comey said that he didn't think Flynn was doing anything wrong, that he misspoke maybe, but he didn't think he was all that bad a guy or he had any evil designs on his statement. Then Comey gets fired, and all of a sudden it's a lie. And that's what is going to the Mueller prosecution thing is this lie to an FBI. Comey is the FBI agent that was lied to.
Wait a minute. Did I hear you right? You think that Mueller and Trump are colluding to destroy the FBI or to expose the FBI?
Yes. It's corrupt. It has some corruption in it, as these new text messages show. And if Mueller is an anti-Trump guy, why would
Are you a Trump supporter? Are you a Trump voter?
Am I? Yes.
Who'd you vote for?
Donald Trump.
Oh, you say I thought you said no. You weren't. So you are a Trump supporter.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. I now understand this. Folks, I marvel at the way people think. And this one I haven't heard. Of all the things out there, I haven't heard John's theory that Trump and Mueller are actively working together to expose the FBI for being the hellhole that it is. Now, the fact that he is a Trump supporter thoroughly explains this. And I will explain when I have time. Fastest 3 hours in media. We have one exciting, busy broadcast hour remaining. We've got some, they're funny, they're intriguing audio sound bites. It's been 9 years, and the libs are still obsessed with my saying of Obama's presidency, I hope he fails. They're still obsessed with it. You shall hear the evidence when we get back. The views expressed by the host on this program documented to be almost always right 99.8% of the time. Here we are having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. I need to issue a small correction on the case of Peter Strzok. Peter Strzok was the FBI's deputy director for counterintelligence. He oversaw, this is key now, Struck. By the way, I've heard both pronunciations. That's why I'm using both names. It's either Peter Strzok or Peter Stroke. But I like the alliteration of struck. Because Stroke did strike. That's what Stroke did. Deputy Director, Counterintelligence, he oversaw the investigation into Hillary's email server, and we know what happened there. Zip, zero, nada. It was Stroke's office that decided the DNC did not need to give the FBI their servers to examine after the Russians had hacked them. It was Stroke seems to have been one of the agents who interviewed Hillary. Stroke was also central in the discussion about prosecuting Hillary, especially with regard to intent, which, of course, they said they couldn't find, which is not even required under the law. Stroke was one of the key players who helped draft Comey's statement on July 5th that exonerated Hillary. And on top of all that, it was Stroke's office that received and handled any attempts at verification of Trump dossier. This Stroke is all over everything. And it was discovered that he was sending anti-Trump tweets and emails to people while he was on Mueller's team doing all of this so-called investigating. And Mueller found out about it. The error I made, I said he was sent packing. He wasn't. He got Brian Ross. He got moved down. He was demoted, but he's still there. Stroke may have been the agent who offered to pay Christopher Steele to write the Trump dossier. And it was Stroke's office that was the source for the FISA warrant request to spy on Trump's aides. Stroke's supervisor was Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, who should have been canned along with Comey, but who Rosenstein wanted to keep. You know, folks, again, I have to stress, we wouldn't be where we are without the totally fabricated, not a shred of evidence to even allude to Trump-Russia collusion. There isn't any evidence. There never has been any evidence. There wasn't any evidence. They tried to manufacture evidence with the Trump dossier. All of this literally made up, and none of the rest of what's happened. Flynn's lies, Mueller's investigation, none of it would have happened if it weren't for all of that being made up. None of this is legitimate. All of this is based on a lying premise that Trump colluded with Putin to steal the election from Hillary. And everything that's happened since then occurs as process crimes, meaning crimes that have occurred during the investigation of something that didn't happen, that they knew didn't happen. That's the kicker. They knew there wasn't any of this collusion. We know it from that book about the Hillary campaign. They revved this up 24 hours after she lost. Remember all the times Obama debunked Russia collusion as impossible and impractical, all during 2015 and 2006? They knew. Folks, there's never been any there on this. And we've had a year and a half of lying fake news that has led to a distracting investigation, media investigation, congressional investigations, for one reason: to stop Trump from implementing his agenda and to hopefully get rid of him. This is the Washington establishment, the ruling class, the deep state, whatever you want to call them. This is how they keep and protect their turf. And they have been in the process here of attempting to overturn a duly constituted election that took place in November of 2016. So, yeah, I mean, I'm livid about that. I've been livid about it since it began. And you've got these brain-dead left-wingers that buy all of this. Do you remember the Trump travel ban? All of these things that the courts, the leftist courts, have bottlenecked and stopped, all of this. None of it, right what I said, none of this has been legit. And yet, like everything else, when it all happens, people on our side accept the premise and then start debating it intellectually, like climate change. Climate change needs to be thrown back in their face instead of our scientists trying to prove it isn't happening. That accepts the premise. Everybody accepted the premise that there might have been Trump collusion. Well, not everybody, but enough people did. You get my point. You and I didn't, but the premise should have been thrown and stuffed right back down their throats. But, of course, the never-Trumpers wanted the premise to be true. That meant a lot of people on our side were trying to hope that this thing actually had some validity to it. It's the power of the deep state. Now, you millennials are young enough, you may not have been listening to this program January 16, 2009. On January 16, 2009, the day before, I had been contacted by the Wall Street Journal. Obama was yet to be immaculated. That would be 5 days later. The Wall Street Journal was asking highly reputed, relevant commentators to submit 400 words on their hopes and dreams for the new Obama administration. And I came here to the golden EIB microphone and I told my audience my reply to the Wall Street Journal.
I don't need 400 words. I need 4. I hope he fails. Well, what are you laughing at? See, here's the point. Everybody thinks it's outrageous to say. Look at even my staff. Oh, you can't do that. Why not? Why is it any different? What's new? What is unfair about my saying I hope liberalism fails? Liberalism is our problem. Liberalism is what's gotten us dangerously close to the precipice here. Why do I want more of it? I don't care what the drive-by story is. I would be honored if the drive-by media headlined me all day long. Limbaugh, I hope Obama fails. Somebody's got to say it.
And they did. They headlined it exactly that way. Limbaugh, I hope Obama fails. What they purposely got wrong was they reported that I was hoping America failed. That I was so rank partisan that I was willing for my country to suffer in order for Obama's presidency to fail. And it was the exact opposite. I wanted Obama to fail so that my country would not. I wanted Obama's liberal agenda, his socialist community organizer agenda to fail. I did not and never have and never will want America to fail. Never. No way. This was my point of trying to articulate the difference. I wanted Obama to fail implementing things like Obamacare. I wanted Obama to fail in letting the Iranians have nuclear weapons. I wanted Obama to fail at keeping our borders open. I wanted Obama to fail at everything he did. I wanted Obama to fail at the stimulus. I did not want America to fail. I wanted America to be saved. Well, I made that distinction every day for a month, even my first nationally televised address to America at the CPAC convention in February. I went through it there on national TV, 4 networks, just as I did to you here. And it continued to be misrepresented. It continued to be portrayed as I was hoping America would fail. And it still is. 9 years later, folks, and they can't let go of it. Saturday night, CNN, The Axe Files. This is David Axe. I guess he's got a podcast that CNN somehow televises. Or maybe it's the CNN show that becomes the podcast. I don't know. But David Axelrod spoke with noted political theoretician and scientist Tom Hanks about the Trump administration. And to set things up, Axelrod brings me up.
You were criticized by some back at the beginning of the administration. I think I shared your view when you said, I'm not rooting for the president to fail. Yeah. And I thought back to at the beginning of the Obama administration, when I was in the administration, Rush Limbaugh said, I'm rooting for the president to fail. And I thought particularly at a time of national emergency, that was a terrible thing to say. And so I felt you owe the next president that same presumption. We're now 10 months in. Where do you think, how would you evaluate him?
Are you trying to tell me these clowns do not want Trump to fail? They damn well are trying to get rid of Trump. It's not just Trump failing. They want Trump gone. But here they are trying to occupy the high road. Yes, when Trump was elected, I never said like Limbaugh did, I hope he fails. That would be very unbecoming. We don't want our presidents to fail. Now we're 10 months in, Hanks. Now what do you think? Is it worth getting rid of Trump? I mean, that's what they're talking about here. These people are trying to destroy Trump and Michael Flynn and Pence and anybody else that they have to get rid of them all. But they can't let go. And you know why? They can't let go because it was effective. It's the same old reason. It was effective. Because everybody knew in the media and everywhere else, they knew what I really meant. They knew that I didn't want the country to fail. They knew that I wanted Obama's policies to fail being implemented. But they couldn't write that. So Axelrod asks political theoretician and scientist Tom Hanks, so we're now 10 months in. Where do you think we are? How would you evaluate Trump now, Professor?
I think we have to admit this, though. Something profound came out of that election, and that is the rules were smashed. The rules no longer applied. A candidate could say outrageous things and not be penalized by when it came down to the voting booth. And you can look at it as though some aspect of it, there was a national referendum that had had enough of this ongoing political continuum that was always say the right things, always feed your base, always say just glittering generalities about whoever, anybody, because you don't want to offend. And that is translated, I think, as you don't want to tell the truth about what your opinions are. Here's a guy that you can't stop.
Let me translate that for you. What Hanks is saying is the country had tired of politicians who never tell you what they think, who always sugarcoat things, who always talk and act in a politically correct fashion. You can't trust them. They seem disingenuous. And we want somebody real. And here came a guy who was real, and he talked real, and people didn't care because they were so fed up with the way the establishment has bollocksed everything up that they were willing to take a risk on the real guy. And Hanks is right. Something profound came, and they still can't deal with that. You know, how many of you think are running around, my God, we've lost Weinstein, we've lost Matt Lauer, we've lost Garrison Keillor, we've lost all of our heroes, and that ne'er-do-well Trump is still there? They're driven insane by this. They even dragged Billy Bush out. Did you see this? They dragged Billy Bush out, gave him an op-ed in the New York Times on Sunday. Yes, Trump, you did say it. You did say you like grabbing, you know what? You did say it. It's not fake. And so Billy Bush is falling on his sword because he'll do anything to get back into business. And Trump is still there. And they just can't deal with it. Now, let's go to The View. This is This Morning on The View. Meghan McCain's over there now. She left Fox News to go to The View. They're talking about Brian Ross being suspended for his report on Friday that Trump, as a candidate, told Flynn to contact the Russians. This is what Meghan McCain said.
I remember when Obama was in office, Rush Limbaugh saying, I want my president to fail, and coming out and saying, I could never get behind that because if our president fails, it means America fails. I feel the same way about Trump. I think if we're celebrating a breach of national security, something that is so egregious that I said this on Friday, it's going to tear our country apart, there's no need to be cheering and celebrating.
Meghan, your guy, reported a lie. There wasn't anything of the sort. Trump did not, as a candidate, tell Flynn to talk to the Russians. But here she even says it. You remember when Rush Limbaugh said, I want my president to fail? That's like saying it means America fail. No, Meghan, no, it's the exact opposite. I didn't want Obamacare. I didn't want national health care. I didn't want the government opening the borders. I didn't want rampant, unending illegal immigration. I didn't want Kate Steinle to get murdered because of sanctuary cities. I didn't want anything that's happened. I don't want $10,000 deductible and $30,000 a year insurance premiums for health care. I didn't want anything we've got. That's what I meant, and they all know it. And now, ladies and gentlemen, moving on, C-SPAN 3 on Saturday, Library of Congress panel discussion about the 50th anniversary of the Public Broadcasting Act. It was recorded on November 3rd. It's a month old. And Cokie Roberts, ABC News, was there. She's also part of NPR's Morning Edition.
Today, Morning Edition is listened to by more people than the three network morning shows combined. It is listened to by more people than anything other than Rush Limbaugh. And I keep saying, Steve Inskeep should get what Rush gets. It is wildly successful and really the primary source of news for millions and millions of people around the world.
This opens up something else I've always known. Her point there is they've got almost as big an audience as this program's, but their guys don't make what she's talking about money. And I've always known this just drives them. I didn't go to college. I probably couldn't find Harvard if you dropped me in the middle of Boston and said, get there in 10 minutes. And here I am. They'd never heard of me. I came out of nowhere, and here these are studied network professionals who've been to all the right schools and so forth. And it just grates on them. Of course, they don't sell advertising at NPR. They exist totally on people giving them money. We have to earn it here. So there's a bit of a difference. I'm looking at I've got more here, but I got to take a break, so we'll do that and be right back. Don't go away. By the way, the stroke guy, the texts and tweets that he was sending anti-Trump, he was sending them to his mistress. And all they did was demote the guy, if they really even did that. Hang tough. Be right back. Before you know it. Back to the phones we go. This is Jordan. This is a young lady, 15 years old, in Republic, Virginia. Hi. It's great to have you here on the program today.
Hi, Mr. Limbaugh. It's good to be here.
Thank you very much.
Hey, I had a question because my dad comes home every single day and talks about the fact that you say global warming is false. And if it weren't for him telling me that it's false, I would have always believed it's true. Why is global warming false?
If your dad hadn't told you that he thinks it's false, you would have believed it.
Yes, because we went to a science museum in Richmond, and that's all they talk about there. And so I was just like, okay, we're the problem with the entire country and the entire Earth.
You know, the best thing I can do for you, I'm going to answer a question here, but I'm going to make you a complimentary subscriber to my website.
Okay.
So when we finish here, hang on, and what we're going to do is get you a username and password. You'll set it up yourself, but it'll be good complimentary for a year. The reason is everything I have ever said about global warming you can find on that website, including links to stories that have appeared on the website I have used in reporting it. So it's not just going to be my opinion. It's going to be backup. You're also going to be able to find the stories from the advocates of global warming that I try to defeat and destroy. So you're going to see both sides presented. You'll have to use the search feature. If you just search climate change or global warming, an encyclopedic amount of information will reveal itself. Now, to answer your question briefly, I believe that the climate changes. To believe that it doesn't would be silly. We've had ice ages. We've had periods of time where the Earth has been insufferably hot, uninhabitably so. What I disagree with is that man is responsible for it. The global warming or climate change movement accepts something. I'll see if I can explain this to you. If you look at the timeline of humanity, not humanity, let's look at the timeline of the planet Earth. Some scientists believe it's billions of years. Some others think it's 10,000 years or whatever. But whatever it is, Jordan, the time that we are alive on that graph is no larger than a microscopic grain of sand. Okay? That's how insignificant this moment in time in terms of the age of the Earth is. And yet, scientists today, which are not scientists, they're liberals, are trying to tell us that the climate conditions at this moment are the norm and provide the baseline from which to judge whether we're getting cooler or warmer. We don't know what the norm is. The Earth is too old. We don't know if the glacial ages were the norm and we're living in an unreasonably warm period of millennia, thousands of years. We don't believe, or we don't know if when it was insufferably hot was the norm. But because the climate change movement is totally political, it isn't rooted in science at all. The climate change stories that you hear, see in your museum are based on one thing: computer models predicting the future 30, 50, and 100 years from now.
Okay.
There is no evidence. They can't even point to any, they don't even try. They have nothing but computer models that are predicting. And note that the predictions of disaster and calamity are all 30, 40, 50 years from now, when very few of us will be alive to know whether they were right or wrong. It is a scare tactic that is designed to promote bigger government. Their claims as to what's causing the warming, you realize it's the United States that's largely responsible? Why is that? They're blaming progress. They're blaming advanced lifestyles, improved standards of living. They're blaming fossil fuels, oil, gasoline, which, if it weren't for those things, we would be living in the Stone Age. We wouldn't be able to have the economy we have today. We wouldn't have the liberty, the freedom. We wouldn't have the productivity we have. We wouldn't have air conditioning. We have the ability to heat our homes. I mean, it's all absurd. It really is. The whole thing is totally absurd, and it's been politicized by people who are using the issue as a means of growing and expanding the government so that the government can control people's lives and how they live. And to me, it's obscene. And to blame the country on earth with the greatest standard of living, the greatest economic advancements, the greatest technological advancements, to blame all of that for the problem is insulting. And then when you look at some of the latest predictions of doom, they are ridiculous. And some of the things, and without wasting your time here in detailing a bunch of them, you'll find all of this, all those examples, some of the most outrageous claims, such as cows farting, and we need to stop eating at McDonald's because cows' farts are causing the earth to get warmer. And that's an old one. Others have suggested we stop using toilet paper because it is contributing to the manufacturing of it, and the use of it is clogging our waste systems, and we'd be better off using leaves or other. It's absurd. The stuff is totally absurd. But here's what they've done. It's really clever how they've done it, Jordan, because everybody, you, me, your mom and dad, everybody wants their life to mean something. You don't want to just be sitting here existing. You want your life to matter. So these people come along and they tell you that through no fault of your own, you are helping destroy the planet because you're living with life's current progress. You're driving big gas-guzzling cars like SUVs. You're flying around on airplanes too much. There's too much waste. But then they give you a way of redeeming your guilt. And that is to vote for Democrats who will then, using big government, implement all of these policies that will save the planet from the horrible things we Americans have done to pollute it. So they give you a chance at redemption, and they give you a chance to have your life mean something. Why, you, Jordan, if they recruit you, you can become a warrior to save the planet. What could be more meaningful than that? This is how they rope young people into thinking they're doing something that matters. But it's a premise that they cannot prove. It's all computer model predictions. Do you believe in God?
Yes, sir.
I do, too. And I'll tell you, to be quite honest with you, everybody has a foundation and a basis for believing things that they believe. I believe in God. I believe God created the earth. I believe God created man with the unique ability of all animals and creations to think and to reason. And it is man, the only element, the only living thing on earth which is concerned with its environment is human beings. And I just refuse to believe it just doesn't make sense to me that a loving God like this would create human beings whose quest is to improve their standard of living for themselves and their families, to make life more productive, to make it more convenient, to live longer, to live healthier, to have all of that end up destroying the planet. I don't think we have that power, Jordan.
Right, I agree.
At one time, they tried to tell us that everybody in Southern California barbecuing at 5 in the afternoon was causing global warming because of all the charcoal briquettes. It's absurd stuff. But they appeal to people emotionally. They tell them, you have destroyed the planet. Your parents have destroyed the planet. They have cartoon shows on Saturday morning called Captain Planet, designed to make you think that evil corporations are polluting and destroying, and they don't care about clean water, clean air. And they rope young people in on this basis, and they grow up, and then they get furthered in their education in school, junior high, middle school, high school, college, all that. And it's an ongoing battle. You sound like you're of your own mind. You may be doubtful of this, even despite your dad.
I was already doubtful of that because I do believe that God gave us the ability to grow as a country and as families. And so I don't believe he would give us the tools to grow if he didn't want us to use them.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, the natural state of the average normal human being is to improve living circumstances, is to have life last as long as it can, to be as happy as it can be lived, to be content. You know, the pursuit of happiness, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, enshrined in the Declaration of Independence. It's the natural quest of families to want to do better for their kids than they had growing up. It's a natural human thing to want to improve safety, to improve nutrition, to improve economics, to improve education. And it's those things that the climate change people say that progress is destroying the planet. And it doesn't make sense to me. I don't think, look at it this way. Let's say that you are president, Jordan. It's like 15 years. You're president. And you call in your Secretary of State, Ivanka Trump. And you say, Ivanka, in 10 years, I want the climate of the planet destroyed. What would you tell her to do?
I have no idea.
You couldn't.
Exactly.
You couldn't. There's nothing you couldn't do it. They're telling us driving SUVs does it. They're telling us flying around in jets does it. They do all of these things. Their leaders fly all over the place in private jets. They fly all over. They drive gigantic SUVs.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried this with the ozone hole. They've tried any number of, the Arctic ice caps are melting when they're not. Have you heard the latest excuse for the ice in Antarctica is warming a bit, but it's still minus 21 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes, we just learned about that.
Okay, there are aquifers. Essentially, there's blowtorch underneath from the inside of the Earth, near the Earth's core. There's the equivalent of a natural blowtorch that is warming water underneath the Arctic ice cap. There are actually people telling us that man is causing that. Humanity, climate change. Now, how in the world is anything we're doing affecting what's happening 50 miles below the Earth's surface?
There's no way.
I'd like to know how we're doing it, because then we could stop it, couldn't we? If we found out that we're causing global warming, we could stop it. But we can't. I wonder why. Here's one more little bit of logic for you. They told us back in the 90s that we were headed for the hottest 15 or 20 years in the future. In the last 15, 13 years, when it has not warmed at all. They have come up with excuses that their models missed something, or there were a couple of volcanoes that put pollution in the atmosphere that covered the sunlight. But if they were smart, what they would have done would have said, yes, we've stopped the warming because our policies have been implemented. But they didn't. They panicked because the Earth isn't warming as they've predicted, and their entire existence depends on their prediction being right. And since, I think they missed a great political opportunity to take credit for the fact there wasn't any warming, just say our policies are doing it. But they're not interested in success. You'd think they'd be happy that the Earth stopped warming for 15 years, but they're not. They're panicked. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you hang on, because you've got a good introductory class. I'll tell you what else I'm going to do. I'm going to throw in an iPad Pro for you so you can read RushLimbaugh.com on the iPad Pro.
Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome. You obviously are an advanced student, and you're capable of everything you're going to see there. So, Jordan, it's been great to talk to you. Don't hang up so we can get all the stuff we need from you to copy on the website and get to the iPad. In the meantime, a brief timeout. Don't go away, folks. I didn't get to the soundbite of Mitch McConnell saying, you know what? It is up to the people of Alabama. If they want to elect Roy Moore, that's fine and dandy with me. What do you think's behind that? What do you think McConnell's doing a 180 on that for? Trump? You mean the Trump endorsement? Whatever. We got to go, folks. We're out of time here. Sadly, fastest 3 hours in media is now in the can, but we'll be back in 21 hours. Revved and ready. See you then.